stream, live recording, and live reading of my brand new book, which you can see here, The Children of Aman, Nemesis of the Absence, which is now available on Amazon. I'll actually show you that right over here. So this is available in a paperback as well as in a digital copy. You can get it, for instance, on Kindle. If you currently are a Kindle Unlimited user, you would be able to actually read this book for free. However, if you are someone who does not have Kindle, you could purchase the book separately, and additionally, you could get the paperback. Personally, I tend to prefer paperback. Hard physical copies, let's say, when it comes to books. Not that I don't ever read online or digitally, but I tend to be able to want the book in my hands and to be able to flip the pages, the kind of textile sensations, all of that. So what I'm going to be doing here today is I'm going to be reading a couple chapters out of the book and giving you guys a little bit of a sneak peek directly from the author. You guys know me as Mike typically. That's, how I introduce myself in my videos. And of course, it's my author name, as you could see on here. And, it is my actual name, M. Power Warren. So if you guys, feel empowered at all, you'll be able to, pick this book up and see even more powers on display, a whole power system, in fact. So I'm going to be reading this, and what I'm going to do as well along the way is I'm going to, so I'll read a chapter, take a break. Any questions you guys might have, any super chats you guys decide to send in, I'll try and read them in between the chapters. And this recording and stream will actually be up afterward. I'm not going to make it members only after it's over. So if anyone tunes in, as it's going on, or if you guys are watching this in the future, all my streams typically end up being something that becomes members only. And if you guys are interested, you could actually join the channel for just $1 a month and get access to hundreds of exclusive videos and all my live streams on here that you could just watch for $1 a month. $1 a month, wow. But yeah, and then of course I have other levels if you guys want to help support the channel. Get a bunch of cool emojis. How about the members spam those in the chat right now, by the way. Hey everybody, how are you guys doing? Xavier, Layman, Biggie Cheese, we got Cemetery Hill, all members, of course. Jolteon as well. And J-Stalgia, kind of cool name. Oh, cool. He's streaming video games, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, so with that being said, if you guys want to pick up your own copy, this will be in the live chat. You guys could see that there is a link there to click on and, go and get your copy of your choice. And then underneath the stream, when I'm able to post a comment, you'll be able to see it there. There's also a description on the stream that has additional links there as well. It might have both versions that you could read. And if you're from another country, for instance, other than America, you just would have to switch it over on Amazon into your own particular country. So, Amazon UK, Amazon France, Amazon, your country of origin or where you live or wherever you want to buy it, and you can get it there as well. So I wanted to release this everywhere as much as possible and kind of get it out there. And so that's why I wanted to do this, It's a big passion project of mine. I've been working on this franchise for over 15 years now. I put a lot of time and effort and thought into it. And I finally, I'm excited to have the first one of many out right now, and to finally get to hear what other people think of it. It's not just words in my head or on a word processor anymore. Now it's out in the real world, which is awesome. So I also decided to do the cover art for this. So this is the proof copy. So, this bar is in the way, but you'll see that the cover art, I actually drew this, and then, I used Photoshop afterward for the coloration and compositing and stuff like that. and I edited the book. So this is all coming from me, straight from the heart, right to you guys. But with that being said, my first book. So keep that in mind, I guess, that, maybe it's not Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or some, top tier fantasy. Obviously, that would be for you guys to decide whether you like it or not. But I hope you enjoy it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first I'll read off the description on the back of the book. And then I will additionally start to actually read the book for you. So let me do that right now. I have to actually pop open the window so I can see it. Thank you so much, Layman. I really appreciate it. I'm happy that you enjoy the book. So let's see. The Children of Aman is the story of an immortal family locked in a generational conflict against the embodiment of nothingness known as the Absence. Book 1, Nemesis of the Absence, is told from the perspective of Seraph, a speaker who wields the mystical powers of the fundamental forces of creation in the name of vengeance. After joining a band of thieves led by the charismatic Jericho, Seraph meets the warrior Nineveh, whose beauty is only matched by her ferocity in combat. However, the speaker is quickly caught up in a conflict of interests that threatens his own goal for revenge, one that soon escalates into a matter of life and death. As their two great enemies join forces to bring an end to our heroes, Seraph and Nineveh must fight to keep everything they have from being destroyed by the overwhelming evil of the Nemesis of Chains. So we got the two different aspects here of the title. Nemesis of the Absence. But can any power truly contend with the might of the Absence? But can he beat Goku? I know that tons of people probably ask that question. And I'll let you guys decide that for yourselves if you feel like power scaling my book series at all. It's pretty crazy, even in the first book, in terms of power scaling. I'll just say that, to be honest, in terms of like the capabilities the characters have. But I try to have it grounded, let's say, in the sense of hard magic, as they might call it. It's not really magic, but you'll see as the story goes on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into all of that in terms of popping open the book, and we'll start to read this for you guys with chapter 1. I'll do little intros to each of them as well, because I will likely actually cut these chapters into separate videos, give everybody extra previews. Of course, my mini fridge started making noise right as I was getting ready to record that, so that's great. But yeah, let me, if anyone wants to actually read along too, if you have your books, you could do so. And not just that, but there is a little bit of a preview of a sample that you can get on the Amazon page. You can read it right there. So, I'm going to start recording. If I turn into a robot at all, by the way, make sure to let me know too. That way I could stop, I can just like unplug and replug everything in. So let me take a sip of water for the working man, by the way. Science fantasy. That's probably a good way to put it. There definitely are science fiction aspects. I'm a big fan of fantasy and science fiction. Depending upon who you talk to, they're the same thing, like George R. R. Martin believes. So ice cold H2O. So let's do this right about now. Hey everybody, my name is Empower Warren, and welcome to my read-through of The Children of Aman, Nemesis of the Absence, in which I'm going to be giving you a sneak peek of the first 2 chapters of this book. If you guys are interested, you can go down below in the description and get your own copy, whether it be physical or digital copies. And this is available internationally for anyone in the United States and outside. But with that being said, let me start reading this book for you guys right here and now. So let me switch on over to that, and you'll be able to see that in my traditional style that I like to do in my videos. So we start with verse 1, death and rebirth. So one thing you'll notice in this book is that I actually have the different chapters titled as verses. You get a little sneak peek as to all the different chapters that are actually there right now. There's a number of them, obviously 23. So with that being said, let's start with the first one. You may call me Seraph. My name is known far and wide. I am a speaker of forces, master historian, an advisor to kings and queens alike. But it was not always this way. Over the centuries of my life, I have traveled this world countless times and met more men than stars in the sky. Their names have long since faded from memory, so too have the stories they told. But one that remains clear in my mind is the tale I shall tell you now. It began as mundanely as any other, yet this single event shaped my life more than any that followed. This story began in my youth when I was a mere 13 years old. I had traveled to the local market in the capital city of Elysia, named after the land of my birth. My goal was to acquire food for my mother, a local seer who had long since taken ill. Though my budget at the time was quite limited, you see. My mother was blessed at birth by Temporam, the force of time, with the incredibly rare gift of future sight. Important figures flocked to her from across the world, all wanting to know what fate had in store for them. However, sometimes this insight gave her visions that were too horrible to bear. She foresaw death, destruction, and I dare not say more. This toll had only grown over time. With my supplies gathered, I handed over my last coin of Tenacian silver to the merchant. Just then, I gazed upon the towering monolithic wall made of black square-cut stones that encircled my city and its gleaming castle within. My father disappeared shortly before the wall was completed, leaving behind a sizable gambling debt. This left my mother as her sole provider, the reason she continued to suffer. Now in her weakened condition, that duty fell to me. But I didn't want that. I wanted more. As I made my return trip, I noticed the overcast sky. A storm was coming. It had grown increasingly dark in Elysia since the four brothers passed from the world. They were the last in the line of immortal kings who reigned for 1,000 years. Yet they died as any other. Their statues lined the central street of the city, remnants of a bygone era. Soon they would crumble to dust. In their absence, Lord Elvid C. Tanas assumed leadership. He was our national protector who built the Great Wall and ushered in an era of unprecedented peace. Though most welcomed this change, the older generations were not so trusting. I didn't understand why at the time. After all, my father was once a royal advisor, yet he abandoned my mother and I to poverty. Could a truly good person do that? Did such morality extend to the kings themselves? Still deep in thought, I tripped over an uprooted stone. This drew the laughter of local children. My face ran red. Among them was a girl I fancied named Avella. Unfortunately for me, she tended to play with the boys of a higher status. But someday, that would be me. A world-renowned speaker of forces and beloved figure like Tanas. Once I turned the corner, I waved my loaf of bread in the air like a wand. Colors shot forth like rays of light as I whispered invocations from an old book left behind by my father. Soon, my life would be better. Or so I thought. Once home, I made dinner while reading from the book. Ingredients whirled around me in the air, guided by my hands on gentle waves of energy. Incredible smells filled my nose as words of power flowed from my mouth. Bread was sliced in midair, herbs and spices combined with vegetables and broth, forming a meager yet flavorful soup. All the while, my stomach rumbled. I looked down at the first bowl and after a moment of hesitation, quickly gulped it down, overcome by my own starvation. Usually, I would feed my mother first, but that day I couldn't wait another moment. Even then, I wanted more. I threw my wooden bowl into the sink with a thud. Pathetic, I whispered, seeing my reflection in the second bowl. My sickly pale skin, crimson red eyes, and light gray hair that seemed to darken a little bit every time I saw it. My tan, ragged clothes covered a weak, emaciated body beneath. Casting aside my self-pity, I grabbed my mother's soup and rushed to bring it to her, only to stop in my tracks. There was an unmistakable sound in the air, one I heard many times before. It was the sound of her screams, spoken in the language of time. But who could be visiting now, especially in her condition? I slowly crept over to the door, linking the kitchen and sitting in the sitting room of our small home, and peered through it. That's when I saw my mother, her body contorting as she channeled her power. Before her stood an ebon figure in a shadowy cloak. His skin was red and scaly, with small spikes running down his neck and around his skull like a crown. 2 larger horns pointed forward, with a golden necklace linking them. 4 horns twisted together, forming a spiked chin at the base of his snouted face. This figure was Elvid C. Tanas. But why was he there? As I listened, I overheard terrible revelations and a chilling prophecy. That Tanas, the hero of Elysia, was in reality its greatest enemy and slayer of its kings. That he would rise to power over all nations and cover them in darkness. But there is still hope. For at his peak of power, a child from another world would appear, one who knew the killing name that spelled his doom. One with a righteous heart, whose power came not from the forces, but from the truth. But even in death, the absence would endure. When the last words were spoken, Tanas struck my mother down. I screamed silently, for if any sound left my mouth, I would surely join her. Then, just as his men set my home ablaze, I grabbed my father's book and leapt through the kitchen window, out into the city streets as far as my feet could take me. The rain poured harder than it ever had before, the sound of it nearly drowned out by the screams of my neighbors as Tanas and his men slaughtered them. None were spared, not even Avella and the others I saw that day. All were a threat in his eyes. As I ran, my bare feet became battered and bloody on the uneven cobblestone streets. I felt nothing as the adrenaline carried me until my body's breaking point, and further still. I couldn't let myself be caught, or everything would be lost. But in time, I stopped. My frail form could take no more. I collapsed to the ground in a nearby alleyway, drenched in rain, sweat, and blood. What was left of the boy named Seraph was now dead, the innocence of my childhood along with him. When I rose again, I was a man, one with a single purpose: revenge. I roared a primal cry of rebirth as thunder crashed in the sky above. My path was set, my enemy clear. The following day, once the rains and flames had subsided, I returned to my home and found what had become of it. From a distance, I could see that the neighborhood had been entirely leveled, like it was hit by a flaming hurricane. Even from there, the scent of burning wood, stone, and flesh was prevalent in the air. This only got worse as I reached my home. As my bare feet walked along the debris, stepping on hard stones and splintered wood, I turned my head to see my nearest neighbors and what remained of their domicile. The father lay dead beneath the broken door, no doubt answering to the authorities before being run through. His family crawled up in the center of the house, all burned down to their skeletons. As I entered what remained of my mother's house, I found the room where she died. However, the scent of burnt flesh was the weakest here. I dug through the debris, but knew my eyes hadn't lied. She was gone. Nothing was left of her in this world, consumed by Tanas. Yet, I remained. The Lord believed he had covered up the truth, but he failed, for one survived that day. I would avenge my mother and use the child she spoke of to defeat him. No price would be too great for me to pay, even if it meant we joined him in death. This was the most important day of my life, until I finally met that child. But that is a story for another day. And so that is verse 1 of The Children of Aman, Nemesis of the Absence. Make sure to stay tuned for verse 2, where we're to get even further into what happens to Seraph after that concludes. With that being said, make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future. Okay, so that was the first verse, the first chapter, and I will be reading the second one shortly. But thank you so much to Cemetery Hill. You said very nice introduction. I appreciate that. I wanted to try and make it to where in the very first chapter or verse in this case that main character Seraph was developed. We got an idea of his backstory, his villain, the stakes, why he wants revenge, where he came from, and his path moving forward. And so with that being said, I hope people will be invested early on in carrying that forward into chapter verse 2, and then of course the other 20-ish that remain after that. But let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Okay. Is Barbarella in this? Sure, why not? I appreciate not calling them chapters. Both Berserk and Claymore did that. Such a little detail that really sets the atmosphere of the story. Berserk, I will tell you, is definitely one of the influences for this book. You'll see that a lot with Seraph and Nineveh as the story goes on. I definitely took some inspiration from like Guts and Casca and some of the other events that are in Berserk. And that's one of them, of course. There's also the power system. I took influence from stories like in terms of anime, like Hunter x Hunter, Full Metal Alchemist, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. In terms of like the complexity, the specializations, the things like that. Avatar: Last Airbender. But then, there's a lot of influences from the Bible is another place I drew influences from. So I think you guys will probably pick up on a lot of them as it goes on. I mean, of course, I drew some influence here and there from Dragon Ball and plenty of the stories I've talked about over the years. So if you guys like action, adventure, drama, fantasy, powers, romance, a lot of that stuff, you're going to get it in this book and more. I can imagine Tanas being like the one OC you made in your DB What If. Maybe a little bit. I do really like that design. So he, has the red scaly skin, the snouted face. He has the horns that twist together to make the chin. He has like the small horns that dot his head and go down his spine. I get even more into his description over time. As well as, his own powers and things of that nature. There's I'm not going to spoil anything. It's always hard for me not to spoil everything in my books. I'm one of those guys who just is like, okay, I got to stop talking now. But let's keep going. What I'll do next is I will get into the next verse on here, which of course is verse 2. From the ashes. So, of course, I decided to include that as a part of the title for the second verse because, Seraph is rising not only from the ashes home, but his former life, sort of, like a phoenix from the ashes. And so I thought that would be a nice little addition there. You're gonna see some parallels throughout the course of the story as well. One of the things I will say is that I'm a fan of echoes, right? Kind of like that video I did a while back about time echoes in Dragon Ball Z. So, you'll see parallels and echoes and, events that resound through time and things of that nature. So let me just do, I might not even include the intros just to have it, be a little bit easier for people to just go from one chapter to the next, but let me just record it anyway, just in case, the intro and outro in that case. Hey guys, my name is Empower Warren, and welcome to verse 2 of The Children of Aman, Nemesis of the Absence. In the last chapter, we saw Seraph and his backstory, how his home was destroyed at the hands of Elvidsi Tanas, his mother slain, and him now rising up seeking revenge. In this verse, you're going to find out what happens following that, and exactly what path Seraph is taken down. So with that being said, let's get into verse 2, which is called From the Ashes. In the years following my escape from certain death, I did what I could to survive, though I often believed my life was difficult before this point. Nothing prepared me for what was to come. Indeed, it wasn't long before I looked fondly upon the meager rations and meals that I consumed in my years of poverty. Because soon my food came from the discarded scraps of the townspeople who passed me on the street, ignoring the starving child as he struggled to even stay alive. But they didn't know the fire that burned inside of me. Few would ever know where my true motivations lie. Some days I was lucky, when someone would take pity on me and give what remained of their half-eaten meals. Even more rare is when I was given something whole or unspoiled. But more often, I would be chased away on sight, especially by shopkeepers and merchants alike. After all, if someone like me was seen by their customers, they might lose out on a sale. Or they simply lumped me in with the other would-be thieves, ready to steal whatever I could get my unwashed hands on. A sad reality I learned all too quickly. In time, I came to respect these people when I was so close to the verge of starvation that I saw no other option but to become one of them. When a local food merchant was distracted, I grabbed a delicious-looking fruit, entirely on instinct, and shoved it into my tattered clothes. As I walked away, my body shaking with hunger, I waited for someone to stop me, yelling, "Stop! Thief!" But no one even noticed. As I sank my teeth into the green fruit, its red juices poured out like a fountain. I drank them down like a man dying of thirst when he stumbled upon an oasis. It may have been the most delicious thing I ever ate. Yet all of it was a reward for my immoral actions. My whole life I looked down on people who would steal, viewing them as lesser, regardless of the circumstances. After all, these were possessions of another, someone who had every right to sell or refuse the purchase of these items if they so chose. Yet now that I looked at the core of the fruit in my left hand, picked completely clean of its nutrients, I realized something. Life wasn't a simple matter of black and white. In time, I began to use my skills more and more for this purpose, taking what I could, when I could, for my own survival. I stood from afar, watching the various marketplaces around Elysia City, finding what would serve me best: food, medicine, the bare essentials. I only took what my own conscience would permit. Once I knew what signs to look for, I began to notice others who were doing the same thing, walking past merchants and shopkeepers, waiting for opportunities, or even creating their own. Some even worked together for this purpose, sharing the spoils of their escapades. They all took what they could, but unlike me, not all of them took for survival alone. Gold, jewels, and other precious materials were in their sights and often found its way into their sacks. But I chose to avoid these sorts and instead focus on the others. This is when I decided to take things to the next level. After watching a particular shop one day, I found a trio of thieves who were working a particularly impressive scheme. Their goal wasn't just to steal food, but also medicine and other items fit for survival. It was ideal for my purposes. As two of the thieves struck up a conversation with the shopkeeper, one quickly grabbed a litany of items from behind the open storefront and placed them into their oversized robe in one smooth motion. Through my study of the forces, I was able to sharpen my senses to see that there were various pockets and compartments sewn into the thieves' robes for this very purpose. After examining a piece of fine linen, the two companions then told the shopkeeper that they would return later that day with the money needed to make a purchase and departed. Shortly thereafter, the trio reassembled and made their way out of the marketplace. I proceeded to follow them, doing my best to remain a comfortable distance behind. If I got too close, they might have caught on to me and learned my intentions. Worse still is what they may do if they feared I might turn them in. My skills at combat weren't much to speak of at this time. I had no formal training to speak of, forces or not. If they had any weapons on them, my life would have certainly come to an end. But as they began to approach the less occupied storehouse district of town, I was sure I had pursued them undetected. If I only knew how wrong I was. As the trio of thieves made their way into the midst of a dimly lit back alley, they abruptly came to a stop. I quickly ducked behind a compost unit, doing my best not to make a sound. Unfortunately, the water flow spillways that fed into this district were poorly maintained. As a result, tiny puddles covered the ground. Worse still was that I was directly under a stream of water, one that stopped hitting the ground the moment I stepped into place. All of this was a dead giveaway for someone with the most acute senses. "We know you're following us," said the man in the lead. "Come out now, or our blades will come to you," said his right-hand man. I sighed at my hubris and made my way out to face them. "When did you notice me?" I asked, genuinely curious. The leader laughed at the audacity of the question. "Back at the marketplace," he replied. I smiled at this. Despite the situation, there was no fear in me. Instead, I was impressed by their skills. These were the kind of people I was hoping to meet. As they surrounded me, I didn't feel any malice in them. Instead, they seemed to be equally impressed. "I'll say, though, you're no ordinary kid," said the leader. He looked up and down, examining me closely. "I could barely hear your footsteps. That's no small feat." "Your breathing, on the other hand," the man spoke into my ear from behind with a breathy voice. He and the leader shared a laugh. Throughout this, the other thief remained silent and completely obscured beneath their cloak. They were observing my reactions closely. "What's your name?" asked the leader. I thought carefully before responding. I was named after my father, a well-known public figure, so it was possible that they would recognize the name and make the connection. Furthermore, I could never be too careful about any possible connections with Tanas. If anyone found out the seer had a child and he survived, my plans would be shattered. So to answer this question, I violated another one of my moral principles. I told a lie. "Pharisem," I replied. "Pharisem? An interesting name. Where exactly are you from? Or where are you from exactly?" asked the other thief. "My origin is my own, as is my business," I responded. "We have you surrounded, kid. Do you really think that you are in a position to say that after what you just pulled?" the thief replied. The leader laughed once again, patting him on the back. "I like this kid. He has a real fighting spirit," said the leader. "Let him have his privacy. His skills are what we want." The leader extended his hand. "My name is Jericho. Come with me, and I'll show you my ways," he said. I accepted his hand in friendship. A new alliance formed in an instant. "My name is Troy," said the other, joining in. "Let me show you to our dwelling," said Jericho, leading the way. As Jericho and Troy left, the third thief stayed behind, still watching me closely behind their concealment. All I could make out in the darkness were a pair of radiant green eyes. The thief leaned in closely, just enough for me to feel their breath on my face. "Pharisem, that is a voice I will make sure to remember," said a woman's voice as the robed figure turned and walked away. Little did I know just how much my life would change after that day. And so that is verse 2 from the Ashes, which in this case also focuses on the next step of Seraph's journey, in which he meets, as we had seen on the back of the book, Jericho, the leader of a band of thieves, as well as Troy, his right-hand man, and another mysterious figure, a woman in this case, who is keeping a close eye, or two of them perhaps, radiant green in fact, on Seraph. So who exactly is this mysterious woman? Is she the one that is spoken of in the description of the book? And not just that, but what exactly is this going to lead to Seraph doing in the future? well, make sure to pick up The Children of Mon, Nemesis of the Absence, which you can get your own copy of down below in the description. And you can get it as a paperback, physical copy, or a digital copy. Thank you for watching, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future. Okay. So in this case, yeah, you can read, in fact, a little bit more of the book on this page right here. Personally, I think that the best place to stop in terms of the preview would have been right here. Amazon decided to give a little bit more for this variation, going into next verse 3, the Band of Jericho, and even giving a small amount of a preview of the one after that, the First Raid. So what exactly is going to happen there? What happens in verse 3? Just for the people who are watching live, I can give you a little bit of a glimpse into this one as well. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, though I do want to at least make sure to give you some more to read on your own and to enjoy in that case. But just for people who are watching live, I want to kind of incentivize you for joining in this stream and other future streams that we might have. So let's just see what you guys are saying in the chat real quick. So I drink a little bit more water. Actually feeling a little dehydrated right now. So I'm going to dehydrate, as Joey Diaz would say. He was more serpent than man. Reminds you of Sasuke. It reminds you of Kurapika. Yeah, I mean, Kurapika is my favorite character in Hunter x Hunter. And not just that, but additionally, I actually tend to really like that type of character in fiction. It's maybe my favorite trope, which is kind of the thinking man, who in turn has, a dark backstory and wants to use his powers in order to either exact revenge or just kind of, isn't the goody two-shoes type of protagonist that we get in so many stories, who just wants to be a good guy and spare everybody and, this and that. Instead, Seraph, well, he definitely blurs the lines of morality. He steals, he lies, he wants to kill Tanas for what he did to his mother. And so, that's his whole motivation, and the actions moving forward are spurred on by his desire for vengeance. Another character, Batman, is another one that I was inspired by here, seeking vengeance and justice in his eyes for the murder of his parents. But a little bit different in terms of the execution. There is a character, of course, as I said before, too, who is known in this story as the Nemesis of Chains, but a very different character than Kurapika, for instance, although he does have some chains of his own. And, of course, another thing, but it does lean into the powers of the forces and such, which, will be revealed later on. But, let's say that the colorations I chose on the book cover are very indicative of a number of things in the story. We have the red coloration, and then we have the green. Two characters been introduced thus far who have red and green eyes. And then we have the other colors reflected, which, they're the colors of the respective forces of creation. And then there's a particular symbol in the center, which is the symbol of Amon, of the royal family, the family itself that is involved in the story. So, not going to give too much away there, but like I said before, I will give you a little bit more of a sneak peek into the book for those of you who decide to tune in live. So this will also be up on the channel after I'm done with this, and I will likely be posting the individual chapters separately as well. So let's get into that right now. So, the Band of Jericho. That's going to be the name of verse 3. Like I said, there is a little bit of inspiration as well from Berserk. And so, you have the band of the Hawk and Berserk. And so I was like, okay, they're a band of thieves who is stealing, for survival. And, it's a little bit, I guess, like Robin Hood and his merry men as well. But additionally, it was like, well, maybe there will be a band of warrior thieves, and you'll get a lot more of that as it goes on. So let me get into that right now as my mouse keeps going crazy for some reason. I don't know what the heck's going on with that. One sec. I also realize you can't see my mouse on your screens. And no, I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm doing a preview for everybody. You guys, if you want to see the whole book, you'll be able to purchase it on Amazon in a physical or digital copy. There's links in the description, in the pinned chat on the live stream, and I'll do a pinned comment as well. So verse 3, the Band of Jericho. After Jericho led me to his company's domain, I spent the following days growing in Let me try this again. After Jericho led me to his company's domain, I spent the following days growing accustomed to those around me. I was surprised to find just how welcome I was into this group. After all, they had so much to lose by letting me in. They were a guild of thieves known as the Band of Jericho, criminals who thrived on taking from those who had much in order to help those who had little. They started out as a small group with a simple mission to survive together. From there, they grew until the point where they had dozens of members. And now they welcomed me into their ranks. If I chose to give them up at any moment, then everything they built would come crashing down around them. Yet I was brought in all the same. To this day, I'm not sure if this was my mistake or theirs. But their welcoming nature had only further revealed why I chose to join them. They were survivors, whose mission had long since evolved into a philosophy. This was the Code of Jericho, something I swore an oath to uphold in front of the guild when I first joined. No member was allowed to take anything for the sake of greed, only according to their need and the needs of others. Jericho no doubt saw me as another one of these people in need, though I wasn't naive enough to think that was all. Ours was an alliance of utility. Despite my youth, now at the end of my teens, I knew that I was highly skilled, or he knew in this case, though I kept the true source of these skills hidden at all costs. A wise decision after what I came to learn about Jericho. But in time, even those secrets would be laid bare. Shortly after my formal introduction to my brothers at arms, Jericho pulled me aside to speak in private. We stood together side by side on a balcony overlooking the abandoned district of the city, filled with storehouses that once held the primary exports of the nation. But in the era of Tanas, the national commerce had become far more isolationist. Now what we produced was only for us. The goods only flowed in one direction, inward, whereas the wealth only flowed upward, out of the hands of the common man, and into those in favor of the lord of the land. A nation of consumers. It's interesting how it seems like there are some things that they kind of formatted strangely on this version of the book, but that's neither here nor there. And with each generation, it consumed itself even more. Jericho stood silently, looking at the city with his steel-gray eyes. His tall frame towered over my still-growing form. His hair was a shade of light brown that had nearly been consumed by gray, showing his advanced age. I wondered just how many centuries he had walked this world, though much of his past remained a mystery to me. However, on this day, he chose to share a sliver of the centuries with me. When I was a boy, younger than you are now, my family was esteemed in these lands. They made their way by brokering trade between the peoples and nations of Omnivida. But in time, this changed, he began. There was a moment of silence where a cold wind swept across the area, stirring up dust along the empty district. I could feel emotion stirring within Jericho, along with a sense of conflict. Then he continued with his story. Soon, their actions caught the attention of some powerful figures, those who wielded incredible powers that were known as the Forces, he said, turning to look at me. My heart skipped a beat. It took everything I had to maintain a calm facade. These men were dispatched directly by the kings of old, and their mission was clear, to put an end to my family's activities. But though they used words to accomplish this, they were not ones of peace, but of destruction. What do you mean? I asked, though I knew the answer. They destroyed my family, leaving only me alive. Not out of mercy, but as a message, a reminder to anyone who looked upon me to know that their rule would not be defied. Since that day, I have had nothing but loathing for those who worship the Forces. Those who use their powers were nothing short of my enemy. At that point, Jericho looked me straight in the eyes with an expression of deadly serious as any I had seen before. That is why I ask you now, Ferris, are you someone who uses or worships the concepts known as the Forces? The intensity of his gaze was incredible, nearly forcing me to break under the overwhelming pressure. However, I would not relent. Not to this or any other will. No, I do not, I replied, telling another lie. Jericho's gaze lingered for a moment longer as he studied me closely. Then his friendly smile returned. Good. We need all the allies we can get in these dark times, he said, returning to look at the bright cityscape beyond the dark district. As I settled into my new bunk, I looked across the large hangar-like building to see the female member of Jericho's entourage removing her outer robes. She was the one who spoke to me as we made our way to the building, but she hadn't said a word since. When she removed her hood, I was stunned by what I saw beneath. The woman's face was slender, with smooth skin and a dark tan complexion. Her raven-colored hair was medium length, with spiked tufts running wild throughout. Her radiant green eyes were filled with a fierce strength that commanded the attention of anyone she looked upon. She wore tan underrobes with a green and white trim that covered her fit, shapely body. For a moment, our eyes met as she briefly glanced across the hall at me. But then her attention was drawn to someone else, another female thief who engaged her in conversation. I had to know who she was. Who is that? I asked Troy as he approached me with a freshly filled water canteen and other practical supplies. Oh, that is Nineveh, Troy said with a knowing chuckle as he turned to face her. He crouched down to position himself next to me as I sat on my bed, watching her as she spoke to the other band member. She was all business, not stopping for so much as a break in between tasks and attending to her own duties. The toughest woman you'll ever meet. Not one for mincing words. Most men steer clear of her. Sooner would she put a blade to your throat than let you bring her rosations. Troy grabbed a brush and pointed the handle at my throat, but I didn't flinch. He smirked. But as I can already tell, you are not most men, he said, jumping to his feet and tossing the brush to me. I caught it, placing it down gently in my bag of supplies. I was worried what he meant by that. Could he tell who I was descended from, or realize the experiences I had been through in the past? He stood up to leave before turning to throw me a towel. Maybe she can too, he said with a wink before walking away. I looked back over at Nineveh as she continued her tasks. She was beautiful for sure. Even at a glance, I could see how strong she was compared to the other women. She stood out to me as I met the other female members of the guild, always managing to draw my eye. From time to time, I would catch her gazing in my direction too. But I was too focused on my mission. There was no room for romance or love in my heart. Not anymore. Those were the things of myths and fairy tales. Still, I often found myself thinking about Nineveh when she wasn't around. Okay, so with that being said, guys, that is going to be the furthest extent of the preview I showed today. And the little read through I've done here, I might look into some of the formatting and stuff that seems to be happening with Audible. With Kindle. I'm not quite sure what happened with some of those pages there. But with that being said, I will say that I gave you guys a little bit more in terms of than what will be shown in the books, the little previews of the first 2 chapters at least. And in fact, the robed figure with the radiant green eyes was Nineveh, who is spoken about in the back of this book. And so it seems that both she and Seraph thus far seem pretty interested and intrigued by one another. So kind of makes you wonder what's going to be happening next. What with the story is going to lead the two of them to kind of communicate and interact with one another even more. And additionally, how her own story and her own mission in life is going to become perhaps entangled with Seraph. So I think that's something you guys might come to enjoy about one of the core themes of the story in this particular book. With that being said, what is going to happen with Tanas? And what is, Seraph going to do? Is he going to be able to figure out a way to exact his revenge upon the ebon figure that took his mother? Additionally, is he going to be able to, at some point, meet this figure who is in the title and on the back of the book, known as the Nemesis of Chains? Who exactly is that? And how does that figure, that character, relate to Seraph and Nineveh, the Band of Jericho, and that much more? Well, I think that you guys are going to find out. And maybe you'll pick up on some themes along the way, too, in terms of the characters. We got Jericho, we have Troy, we have Nineveh. Some of those names, might be reminiscent of certain historical areas in terms of their inspiration. So, if you guys are fans of history, especially ancient history, you might find that even that much more appealing. So that being said, let's see what you guys are saying right now. Let's see. So you were saying that the chapter kind of reminds you of Rukia's story. Oh, from Bleach? I honestly forget where her backstory is. So, maybe. Let's see what else. You knew she was a girl. Well, yeah. That's part of the reason, too, in the second chapter, that I was saying, like, there and everything up until the point where she, spoke to Seraph. And at the very end, last words of that chapter in terms of dialogue, to kind of conceal that a little bit. Like she was staying concealed under her robes. And then, of course, she takes them off, and Seraph is immediately like, wow, he's blown away by her, not only in terms of her strength, and also her beauty. So let's see. AI art. I do want to see eventually people draw art of this. It would be pretty awesome in terms of fan art. That's going to be a really cool day in my life to see that happen. Let's see. Though the background is similar to Arya Stark, Seraph's actions in verse 2 reminded me of Yarvi from Joe Abercrombie's Shattered Sea trilogy. Oh, I haven't actually, I haven't read that. I'll have to, let me write that down. Shattered Sea. I'll have to check that out. Sounds interesting name, at least. Let's see. Hayato. There's a book club on. Yeah, we do have on the Discord. Anyone is able to join. Members and non-members alike can join the server. We have the book club on there. We have tons of fun things that we do on there. Hey, it's Frieza. How you doing? Thought you'd pop in. Thank you for the invitation. Hey, well, thank you for showing up. Let's see. So only one book so far. Yes, one finished book thus far, The Nemesis of the Absence. I have a number of other books that are planned to come out in the future that are going to directly follow this book right here. And then additionally, there will be ones that will be interconnected. Not all of them necessarily will take place in chronological order. You'll even see in this book that there are, like flash flashbacks, let's say. You know, there's memories, there's things of that nature that will be revealed as you read on. But yeah, like not every book necessarily will be like after next, or even take place in the same world. You know, this is a whole multiverse that I created, and it's not like the a lot of multiverses and fictional stories where it's like every single one is like an alternate timeline, basically with slight variations. It isn't like, I don't know, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness when they go to that one universe and green means go and red means stop. Oh, actually, you know, let's strike and reverse that like Willy Wonka, where green means stop and red means go. I don't remember if they mentioned yellow, but yeah, it's not like the same people don't exist in every universe, and like the configuration isn't the same. You know, give you guys a little hint as well. That's actually what's in the corner of each of the corners of this cover is the multiversal structure. And you can see little planets I actually drew at full size and shrunk them down on Photoshop and stuff like that. When I put them in there, you can see the stars and the celestial bodies. As you can see, not all of them look normal either. So, you know, also, what's this in the center? So that's something you'll have to see firsthand, literally see by reading it, but in your mind's eye, right? And the symbol, of course, you know, the prisms in the center, there will be an explanation of what these are, and that much more as the story unfolds. Like I said, there is a preview also on Amazon that you guys can check out. But I would recommend, if you guys are interested in the story, hang down to the links and picking up a copy today, because I think that is something that you'll enjoy if you like fantasy, action, adventure, complex power systems, romance, and that much more along the way. You know, world building. I spent a lot of time with the world building and developing the stories for the characters and their development over the course of the series. You know, I'm one of those people who plans most things out in advance, but at the same time, like, there's so much that can be done, or like so much room to add over time. So sometimes I could have a little bit of the having my cake and eating it too there, where I can, you know, be like, okay, this is going to happen during this period of time, and then writing in all the little details and how everything actually transpires along the way. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun in terms of that case, with you guys reading along. Okay, so in the book, Seraph has red eyes and silver hair. What was the inspiration for it? So in terms of that, with Seraph's character design, you know, he has really pale, like, porcelain skin, basically. You know, he has he has gray hair, and his eyes are crimson red, like blood. And so I touched upon it a little bit before, but each of the fundamental forces of creation have a representative color. You know, I color coded all of the forces, the powers, everything like that. You know, I like to color code things. You know, the absence, of course, is the darkness, the space in between. So like Seraph's eyes are red, and the force of reality is red. So maybe there's a connection there. You know, Nineveh's eyes are green. The force of life is green, you know, and then time is blue, energy is yellow, matter is purple, you know, so like, in terms of that, maybe there's a little connection there. In terms of Seraph himself, well, I don't remember if I talked about that yet in the first couple verses, but Seraph isn't entirely the same as everybody else around him, let's say. His father isn't quite like other people. Very dissimilar, as a matter of fact, in terms of his origin, his biology, everything like that. And so Seraph's physical appearance reflects that. And that's, again, also explained a lot more as the story goes on, who his father, Seraphim, is, and, like where he came from, as he said that he was named after his father, who is a very important figure connected to the royalty of the past that is now gone. And Tanas is rising up to replace them. He's the slayer of kings, as it says in the first verse, in which he is kind of responsible for that. Who is this immortal lineage of kings? How are they connected to the series, the name of it, and that much more? So yeah, like I get into all of that as the story goes on. So yeah, like there's a lot of contrasting I do as well over time, in terms of like the appearance of things, and also in terms of, well, you'll see. Can't hide all that goodness under a cloak. I mean, hey, she did a good job of it, though. What are those called again? A golden horn? It's just, well, the multiversal structure. The actual creation is called the spoken, but I don't believe I mentioned that in this book. Maybe at one point I see. The thing is that there are actually subtle references in terms of the language and the capitalization throughout the book. So there will be things that are capitalized, or it's like, why would he capitalize that? But it's because it's actually directly referencing something that makes sense to be capitalized, kind of like, for instance, like how when somebody talks about, I don't know, the monotheistic God, they capitalize the G or the H for he or whatever have you, and so like, you'll have like death has like the capital D, and then you'll have like the absence, capital A, and things like that. So there are things like that along the way that will make sense as not. There are things in this book that foreshadow later books as well. Like it's not just entirely self-contained, but I tried to kind of write this from like, what George Lucas did with episode 4 of Star Wars, where it's like, okay, let's make this as self-contained as possible, or at least let's make this as complete of a story in one book as possible. And then, if people like it, I mean, I'm going to do them anyway, but I'm just saying, if people like it, we move forward with other stories in the series. But I hope it stands alone being good on its own. But then, it can lead into other things because obviously it's a series. Thanks, him. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that Kindle does, like you're saying, you can get credits and stuff back too for the book and everything like that as well. Yeah, so one thing that I'll say about the colors and everything is that I tend to, and just about everything I make, I tend to like to color code things. That's something that I kind of picked up from years of like filmmaking and studying film. Like Stanley Kubrick, for instance, was a big fan of like his perspective and how he liked to color code things. He's one of many filmmakers that I really enjoyed how he would utilize visuals in order to tell an even deeper story. And so as a result, like I want everything to be as color coded. Well, not literally everything being color coded, but like in a sense of like this color will mean something. Some people, it's kind of like there's, I don't know, like a joke or whatever about like, oh, the art teacher says that the curtains were blue, which symbolize, like the fact that the character was depressed and blah, blah, blah. It's like, for me, I tend to actually think that much into my stories where I'm just like, I tend to like overthink everything, as you guys probably noticed from watching my videos over the years. And so I do that with my own books as well. So pretty much every choice in my books, I try to make consciously, but maybe not, you know, maybe a cigar sometimes is just a cigar. So I'll try and keep things ambiguous. And I also like to try and be applicable like Tolkien, as opposed to allegorical, where it's like, you know, this is only this. This is obviously this, you know, which for me, it's more like this could be this, or this could apply to you, whether you live in America or, you know, England or India or, you know, China or Japan or wherever else. You should be able to take away what's in here and like apply it to your life and maybe things that are historically relevant in your world. So, you know, I like to do that as well. I think, you know, of course, I talked about Dragon Ball a lot on here. I think that's one of the brilliant things that Toriyama did, where it's like his story can be projected onto from so many different perspectives, like the themes and what is happening there. And I think that makes a world of difference in terms of how it appeals to everyone, regardless of language and culture and even era. You know, decades later, people still love Dragon Ball, even though it started in the 1980s. So that says a lot. You know, there's a lot of stories and franchises that they're here today, gone tomorrow. But for Dragon Ball and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, the Tolkien Legendarium, and, you know, things like that, still relevant today. So that says a lot about staying power and how important it is. And so I hope that people will remember anything I've made 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now. That'd be cool. Also, books, you know, they're kind of future proof in a sense, right? Because like if the grid goes down, you could still read a physical book that's in your hands. So, yeah. Okay. It's really hot in here, Tom. That being said, guys, do any of you have any other questions before we wrap up the stream for today? Again, if you guys are interested, you can go down below in the description and pick up your own copy today. Me thank everybody too as well who was very generous today. Layman, thank you so much as always. Same to Cemetery Hill. And really everybody else who showed up today. We got the top fans. Who are the top fans today? Cemetery, Layman, Biggie Cheese, Furusawa, Jolteon, Xavier de God, J-Stalgia, Trubisque, Airdog. And then let's add even more. Hymn of N and Hayato. Thank you all so much for your contributions to the stream. That being said, guys, I will be talking about even more stuff to come in the future. Other projects I'm working on, other books, in fact, not just in this series, but other series I've been working on for a little while too. You know, my mind, my imagination is always running wild, right? So with that being said, let's say that this isn't the only book that I will be releasing in this particular age that we're living in. So stay tuned for that. But thank you all for tuning in. And let's see. The link doesn't work. If anyone is buying the book and the link doesn't work, it's because of the location. Yeah, so the one I shared, I think, is from the United States. I think after you're on there, you could switch over to your particular location. Like whenever I go on Amazon on like the UK or French website or something like that, it says, do you want to switch over? Like a notification will pop up and it's like, do you want to switch over to your own storefront or whatever their language is? If you can't do that for whatever reason, just search the name of the book, The Nemesis of the Absence, and you should be finding it under my name. There's even a little video on there, in fact, where I give a little bit of an explanation as well. And thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate it. And, you know, you could tell this was live with all the with all the little things thrown in there along the way. But all right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future.